Right now I'm standing against the backdrop of the Pudong skyline, gripping a 180, our MB Negroni. Small, overpriced. The sound of ice hitting the glass sounds like bones. 2 weeks ago, Julian stood in the office. In front of all the interns, he patted my shoulder. He said, "Mark, you're a perfect executor, but you have to understand, some people are born lions who tell the story. And you? You're the gardener who prunes the hedges. It's not an insult. It's just your nature as a guest in this country. By the way, if you're watching this, subscribe. Tell me where you're from. Are you back home? Or are you like me, hunting for bones in a forest of steel?" It was 2017. When I first landed in Suzhou, I had a maxed-out credit card with a $300 limit and a teaching contract for 8,500 MIB a month. Julian started in the same cohort. Julian had the Ivy League pin. Julian had the blonde hair and that "I belong here" California accent. Julian had the corporate subsidized apartment with the in-unit dryer. I had a basement with gray mold climbing the corners. He got the full visa stipend. He got the MacBook Pro with the corporate logo. He got the HR-led city tour. I got a crumpled black and white photocopy of a subway map. And a green second-hand thermos that wouldn't stand up straight. I spent 3 years becoming a ghost. I didn't just teach English. I self-taught logistics. I scouted every factory in Yiwu and Kunshan. I kept a notebook with the private cell numbers of 240 suppliers. I knew their kids' birthdays. I built the perfect, localized supply chain loop. Every line of data was typed at 3 a.m. in a family mart, fueled by 4U and instant coffee. That was my leverage. My only way out of the smell of basement mold. I gave it to Julian, because he was my mentor. He didn't even look at it before tossing the USB into a drawer. He talked about it like he was reading the weather report. He said, "Mark, China doesn't need your plan. They just need your face. Go put on that cheap suit. Cut the ribbon. Smile. That is your value." The next day, that plan appeared on the HQ presentation screen. There was only one name on the title slide: Julian. He became the regional head because of it. He moved into a villa in the Sinan Mansions. My reward was a 500R MB Starbucks gift card and a jagged blade wrapped in casual conversation. "You're a stable gear, Mark. Stable as a piece of Nordic furniture. You don't need a mind. You just need to be placed in the right spot." The 4 years that followed were a grind. 25 years old, I moved to Shanghai and rented a rotting attic in Jazabi. 27 years old, I mastered every unspoken rule of the Yangtze Delta banquet tables. 29 years old, I owned 3 shell companies and a network Julian will never understand. I pay my own social security. I curate my own. Back to now. Julian just walked over and adjusted my tie. He used that high society tone to give me my orders. "When we present, stand on the far left. Smile a lot. Keep your mouth shut. Don't let your accented Chinglish steal my spotlight. After all, today is the day I signed this $120 million contract. The black USB in my jacket pocket isn't a PPT. It's 5 years of his fraudulent expenses and laundered kickbacks. It contains the rules of this place that he never bothered to learn. The kind of rules that make people disappear. The show is about to start. The ballroom of the Hyatt on the Bund smells like expensive lilies and desperation. Julian is at the center of the room. He's wearing a $3,500 Tom Ford suit. I know the price because I'm the one who picked it up from the tailor in Xintiandi. I'm the one who argued with the shopkeeper over the sleeve length. Julian stood there like a mannequin, checking his Tinder, while I knelt on the floor to check the break of his trousers. "Mark," he whispered as the cameras started flashing. "Make sure the lighting doesn't hit my forehead too hard." I looked tired. He looked like a man who had spent his entire life being told he was the protagonist. I looked like the guy who holds the script. "If you're listening to this, tell me, Have you ever been the one who built the stage only to be told you're not allowed to stand on it? Let's talk about the $120 million deal. It's a logistics merger, connecting European luxury brands to the Tier 3 cities in China. Julian told the board it was his visionary cross-border strategy. It was my 2018 notebook, the one with the coffee stains and the phone numbers of truck drivers in Ningbo. 2019 was the year of the quiet grind. While Julian was taking business trips to Sanya with the marketing director, I was in warehouses. Warehouse A, humidity 85%, smell of damp cardboard, 45 minutes outside of Kunshan. Warehouse B, broken air conditioning. A foreman named Lao Wang who only spoke a dialect I had to learn syllable by syllable. Julian got the champagne brunches. Julian got the LinkedIn endorsements from the CEO. Julian got the Expat of the Year nomination in a local magazine. I got a chronic cough from the dust of 50,000 shipping crates. I got a deep, surgical understanding of how money actually moves through the borders. Julian would call me at 11 p.m. on a Friday. "Mark, the customs forms are stuck. Fix it. That's what you're good at, right? Being the fixer?" He said fixer like he was talking about a plumber coming to unclog a toilet dirty unseen. But here is what Julian didn't realize. When you give someone the keys to the lower levels, you give them the keys to the foundation. I didn't just fix the customs forms. I routed them through 3 shell companies I registered in the British Virgin Islands. Names like Aura Logistics and North Star Trading. Names that sounded like Julian's vision. But the bank accounts attached to them? They didn't lead to Giuliano. They didn't even lead to the company. They led to a quiet, unassuming apartment in Jing'an, where I kept a secondary server. Julian used to laugh at my Chinglish during internal meetings. Mark's Mandarin is functional, he'd tell the investors, a smirk playing on his lips. It's perfect for talking to the help. But for high-level negotiation, that requires a certain nuance. He'd then proceed to speak his broken, tone-deaf Mandarin that made the Chinese CEOs wince. But they smiled, because he was the Ivy League golden boy, and I was the background foreigner. Now the ceremony is beginning. The CEO of the partner company, Mr. Zhang, is walking onto the stage. Mr. Zhang is a man who values 2 things, face and mathematics. Julian has given him the face. I am about to give him the Julian walks to the podium. He doesn't look at me. He adjusts the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, his voice smooth as silk. "Innovation is not just about moving products. It's about moving hearts." I reach into my pocket. I feel the cool metal of the black USB. In 180 seconds, the presentation on the 20-foot LED screen is scheduled to start. Julian thinks it's a slide deck showing the projected 25% growth for the next fiscal year. It isn't. It's a line-by-line breakdown of the $4.2 million he siphoned into a fake consultancy firm that actually paid for his apartment's rent and his mistress's Porsche. And the best part? The consultancy firm is registered in my name. Wait, no, it's registered in a name that looks like mine on a quick glance, but in the fine print, it's his personal passport number that authorized every wire transfer. I spent 4 years letting him think I was a Nordic furniture piece. Sturdy. Dumb. Easily moved. But even furniture can be a tripwire if you put it in the dark. The lights dim. The room goes silent, save for the hum of the high-end HVAC system. Julian clicks the remote. "Our growth strategy is built on transparency," Julian says. The word transparency hangs in the air like a bad joke. It's not a graph. It's a scanned copy of a wire transfer, $250,000. Destination, Julian's personal global account. Reference, marketing services. The room doesn't gasp. Real power doesn't gasp. It just gets very, very cold. I watch Mr. Zhang's face. He doesn't move a muscle. He just leans forward, his eyes reflecting the blue light of the screen. Julian doesn't notice at first. He's looking at his notes. As you can see by the figures on the screen, our initial investment in the Ningbo sector. He stops. He hears the silence. Not the respectful silence of an audience being impressed. The heavy silence of a guillotine blade being unlocked. He turns around. His face goes from golden boy tan to dead fish gray in exactly 1.4 seconds. The slide changes. It's a photo. Julian at a KTV in Macau, posing with a stack of cash and 3 people who are currently under investigation by the local authorities. The photo was taken by a friend of mine, a driver I'd helped with his son's school tuition back in 2018. Julian fumbles for the remote. He clicks it frantically. The screen doesn't change back to the PPT. The screen is now a live scrolling feed of the company's internal ledger, highlighted in red where the numbers don't match the tax filings. There seems to be a technical glitch, Julian stammers. His voice has lost its California silk. It sounds thin, brittle, like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar, if the cookie jar was a federal offense. He looks at me. He's looking for the gardener. He's looking for the fixer. He's looking for the man who spent 4 years pruning the hedges so he could look beautiful. I stand on the far left, just like he told me to. I smile. I don't say a word. I just take a slow, deliberate sip of my 180 day. Mr. Zhang stands up. He doesn't look at Julian. He looks at me, because Mr. Zhang knows. He knows that Julian couldn't even find his way to the warehouse without a GPS. He knows that Julian doesn't know the difference between a bill of lading and a grocery receipt. He knows that the only person in this room who knows where the $120 million is actually going is the background foreigner. Julian tries to walk toward me. He's whispering, his breath smelling of panic and expensive mints. Mark, turn it off. Turn it off now and I'll give you whatever. I'll make you a partner. I'll give you 5% of the equity. I lean in close. The cameras are still rolling. The investors are watching. I speak in a tone that is as flat as a weather report for a Monday morning. Julian, you're a lion, remember? And I'm just a piece of Nordic furniture. Furniture doesn't turn things off. It just stays where you put it. I step back. I leave the stage. I don't run. I don't look back. I walk toward the elevators. If you're still watching, stay tuned for part 4. Because Julian is about to find out that when you lose face in this city, you don't just lose your job, you lose your exit strategy. I walked out of the Hyatt on the Bund. The Shanghai winter wind cut across my face like a razor blade. But I didn't feel the sting. I felt a weightlessness, a cold, silent clarity. If you're still subscribed, then tell me, when was the last time you felt the world go quiet right before a storm? Within 72 hours of that gala, the dominoes didn't just fall. They disintegrated. Monday morning, 8 a.m. Julian's keycard failed at the lobby turnstile. That little plastic rectangle let out a short, pathetic beep. A red light flashed. That was the first toll of his funeral bell. He stood there, clutching his $6,000 leather briefcase. The security guard didn't even look him in the eye. The guard just said like he was checking the morning temperature, "Sorry, you aren't on the list anymore." Monday, 10 o'clock a.m. Julian's corporate laptop was remotely wiped. His Ivy League network vanished. The investors who used to hold his hand at the banquet and call him brother. The socialites who liked every single one of his Instagram posts. They evaporated like mist under a heat lamp. His phone buzzed. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a friend. It was a WeChat message from his landlord. "Your lease at the Sinan Mansions expires the day after tomorrow. Please vacate by noon." I didn't answer once. I was sitting in a hole-in-the-wall noodle shop in Wukong Road. I had a bowl of 1/8 RMB intestines noodles in front of me. I listened to the loud, chaotic chatter of local Shanghainese. To me, it was the most beautiful symphony I had heard in 5 years. He started sending emails. They moved from rage to threats to pathetic begging. "Mark, I can give you the 3 shell companies. Mark, don't do this. We're friends. You're my right hand. Mark, please. Tell me who else you sent those bank statements to. I deleted them. I didn't tell him that I didn't just send them to audit. I sent them to Old Wang, the supplier Julian used to call a clueless peasant, behind his back. Men like Old Wang don't care about losing money. They care about being treated like a fool by a golden boy taking kickbacks. The next 3 months were my montage. 30 years old, I was no longer a shadow. 30 years old, I formally took over every factory line in that 42-page PDF. 30 years old, Old Wang patted my shoulder at a dinner and said, "Mark, you know the rules here. You're one of us. I don't hire a driver. I prune my own bonsai trees on my attic terrace." And Julian. Julian was socially dead. He tried to find work in Beijing, but every time he walked into an interview room, an anonymous envelope was already sitting on the recruiter's desk. Inside was the evidence of his fraud and his inflated resume. It was as if every time he tried to step onto a new rug, I was there, 0.5 seconds ahead of him, pulling it out from under his feet. He finally understood what I meant. In this city, you can be a lion, but a lion without a cage built by the gardeners doesn't even have the right to scavenge for bones in the trash. It's 2024. I saw Julian again yesterday. It was in a failing, greasy burger joint in Chongqing. He wasn't wearing Tom Ford anymore. He was wearing a pilled gray hoodie that smelled of stale cigarettes. His blonde hair was a matted mess, like a patch of dead grass. He sat in the corner, counting coins with trembling fingers. A few crumpled 5-year notes. Some shrapnel. If you're wondering if I felt a surge of revenge, the answer is no. When you truly move past someone who once looked down on you, you don't feel hate. You feel a biological sense of irrelevance. His eyes snapped to mine. It was the look of a drowning man seeing a piece of driftwood. He stumbled over to my table. Mark, I knew you'd show up. He started reciting a script that was 5 years too old. You're doing big things now, right? I heard about the logistics IPO. That was our plan, remember? Just one word from you. Just tell them it was all a misunderstanding. I don't need much. Just give me a manager role. I can handle the spreadsheets for you. Just like you used to do for me. I stopped walking. I looked down at his hand gripping my sleeve. The same hand that used to swirl expensive whiskey while he told me I was stable as furniture. Now his fingernails were bitten down to the quick and stained with grease. I peeled his hand off my arm. Gently. I looked at him the way you look at a piece of broken, discarded IKEA furniture on the sidewalk. I said, "Julian, you just used the word our. In my memory, there was only one person in that moldy basement in 2017. There was only one person in those freezing warehouses in 2018. And there was only one name on every line of that data. That name was Mark." He froze. He tried to open his mouth again. "No, Mark, you can't be this cold. I brought you into this industry. I was your mentor." I cut him off. I used his favorite tone, the weather report of microaggressions. I smiled and said, "Julian, you're a perfect storyteller, but you need to understand something. In the final chapter of this story, you aren't even the villain. You're just the extra weeds that got pruned away to let the garden grow." I didn't look back. I didn't call the press to humiliate him further. I didn't even check to see if he finished his burger. Because in the logic of this city, the ultimate punishment isn't destruction. It's total, absolute silence. He will stay in that burger joint counting his coins. He will tell anyone who listens that he used to run this town, but he will never exist in my world again. I'm sitting in the back of my Hongqi now. Pudong is glowing outside the window. I'm not holding a 180 or MB Negroni anymore. I'm holding a bottle of plain Tuyuan water. And for the first time in 7 years, the air in this city finally tastes clean. 31 years old, my office moved to the Qian'an's 58th floor. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Huangpu River looks like a tamed gray ribbon. The air no longer smells of basement mold. Instead, it's the scent of expensive silver fir and fresh Sumatra single-origin coffee. If you're still watching, subscribe. Then tell me, when you finally reach the top, what is the one thing you're most afraid to lose? After the Julian incident, the flies disappeared, but the predators arrived. 2 weeks ago, Christopher sat across from me. He's the Asia-Pacific partner for a global logistics fund. He was twirling a $1,700 limited edition Mont Blanc pen between his fingers. He looked at me with eyes that lacked any thermal signature. He said, "Mark, you've cleaned up this mud pit beautifully, but you have to admit, you're just an expert at digging tunnels. We're building a cross-sea bridge now. This $500 million buyout agreement is the biggest retirement check you'll ever see. Sign it. Take the money and go back to your home country. This is no longer your game. It's an upgraded version of the microaggression." Julian told me I was a gardener. Christopher was telling me I was a mole. Christopher had the bespoke Savile Row suit. Christopher had the Rolls-Royce with the private driver. Christopher had the black card that could skip the line at any club in Mayfair. I had the yellowing notebook with 240 supplier numbers. He had the absolute mandate of the board. He had a legal team from Wall Street. He had the power to decide the life and death of a company like he was checking the weather. I had a 200-page non-disclosure agreement that looked more like a gag order. Christopher thought he bought the company. He didn't realize he only bought the furniture. If you're watching this, tell me where you're from. Are you the one in the boardroom or the one on the loading dock? 31 years old, I spent 6 months being compliant. I let Christopher take the corner office. I let him change the logo to something global and sleek. I let him fire the middle managers I'd trained for 3 years. He got the press releases in the Financial Times. He got the keynote slot at the Logistics Summit. He got the handshake photos with the city officials. I got a consultant title and a desk near the elevator. But at night, the ghost came out. 2:00 a.m. I wasn't at the cocktail parties. I was in a small, windowless office in a Kunshan industrial park. I was drinking 10 RMB bottled green tea with the men who actually own the trucks. I wasn't talking about synergy or globalization. I was talking about their daughter's university tuition. I was talking about the price of diesel in Zhejiang province. Christopher tried to optimize the cost centers. He cut the contracts with the 240 suppliers I had nurtured for 7 years. He replaced them with a digital cloud platform run by a firm in Singapore. He said, "Mark, the human element is a liability." He'd talk about precision like it was a religion. I watched the system begin to rot from the bottom up. It wasn't a sudden crash. It was a slow, agonizing leak. The crisis hit on a Tuesday. A massive backlog at the Ningbo port. 4,000 containers of luxury goods stuck. Christopher's digital cloud platform gave him an error code. The Singapore firm gave him a polite system maintenance notification. The investors were calling. The board was screaming. Christopher walked into my small office by the elevator. His Savile Row suit was wrinkled. His $1,700 pen was missing. He didn't look like a predator anymore. He looked like a man who had realized he was standing on a bridge made of paper. "Mark," he said. His voice was forced, the weather report tone finally cracking. "You still have those phone numbers, don't you? The local contacts?" I didn't look up from my laptop. I was looking at a spreadsheet of my shell company's recent profits. I said, "Christopher, I thought the human element was a liability. Precision is the future, right?" He leaned over my desk. I could smell the sour scent of his panic. "I'll double your buyout. $10 million. Just get those trucks moving." I looked at him. I felt the same coldness I felt with Julian. I said, "The trucks aren't stuck because of a system error, Christopher. They're stuck because they're waiting for a signature they recognize. And they don't recognize yours." I didn't take the $10 million. I took the evidence. While Christopher was trying to fix the port, I was finishing my final file. Every cost-cutting measure Christopher had implemented was a kickback. The Singapore firm, owned by his brother-in-law. The digital cloud platform, a shell company used to inflate the fund's valuation before the buyout. Wednesday morning. The board meeting was a slaughterhouse. I didn't show up in a suit. I showed up in a hoodie and jeans, the same outfit I wore in the Suzhou basement in 2017. I walked in. I didn't use a PPT. I used a stack of physical stamped receipts from the Kunshan factories. Receipts that proved Christopher had overcharged the fund by $45 million in 6 months. Christopher tried to laugh. This is hearsay. Mark is a disgruntled consultant with an... I didn't argue. I just hit send on an email BCCing every major investor in the Regulatory Commission. The room went silent. The kind of silence you find at the bottom of a well. I watched Christopher's face turn the color of a wet sidewalk. The board chairman stood up. He didn't look at the $45 million. He looked at the fact that I had the power to stop the entire supply chain of the Yangtze River with one phone call. It's now. Christopher is gone. The legal battle will take him years. His Savile Row suits will be sold to pay for his defense. The board offered me the CEO position. I turned it down. I don't want to be the lion anymore, and I'm certainly not the gardener. I am the owner of the land. I sold my shares back to the fund at the peak of the recovery. The number in my bank account has more zeros than I ever dreamed of in that moldy basement. I bought the warehouse in Kunshan, the one where I used to hide from the rain. I turned it into a high-tech logistics hub that I run privately. I saw Julian one last time. He was working as a brand ambassador for a cheap gym in Pudong, handing out flyers in the rain. He didn't recognize me in the back of my Hanchi. I watched him for a second. Then I rolled up the window. If you've listened this far, understand this. In this world, people will try to label you. Executor, gardener, ghost, fixer. Let them think they put you in a box. Just make sure you're the one who owns the box. The air in Shanghai is cold today. But the view from the 58th floor? It's finally clear. 32 years old. I am standing in the center of my office on the 58th floor of the Qiantan Center. The thermostat is set to exactly 22.5 degrees Celsius. The air is filtered through a medical-grade HEPA system that removes 99.9% of the city's dust. I am looking at a succulence on my desk. It cost 45 RMB. It is the only thing in this room that isn't made of glass, steel, or synthetic leather. If you're still watching, subscribe and tell me what is the exact price of the air you... Let's talk about the contrast. Julian had the $6,000 briefcase. Christopher had the $1,700 Mont Blanc pen. Mr. Chen, the man currently sitting in my lobby, has a bloodline. Chen's grandfather didn't work in a warehouse. Mr. Chen's grandfather didn't know the price of a 4 yuan Family Mart coffee. His family owns the invisible ink. They own the stamps that turn a piece of paper into a law. They own the silence that follows a disappeared man. When I first arrived in 2017, I was a foreign teacher. Julian got the 12,000 RMB housing allowance. Julian got the international health insurance that covered dental and vision. Julian got the Tinder dates with girls who thought he was a global executive. I got a 2,500 Membe room in a shared apartment where the bathroom door wouldn't close. I got a Group B visa that required me to report to the police station every time I changed my socks. I got the flu in November and realized my insurance only covered catastrophic limb loss. Now Mr. Chen is here to collect. He doesn't knock. He doesn't call ahead. He walks into my office wearing a black silk tong zhuang with hidden buttons. He sits in the chair that cost more than my first year's salary. He looks at me like I'm a particularly interesting species of mold. "Mark," he says. His voice is as flat as a dial tone. "You've been very busy. The 240 suppliers, the Kunshan hub, the BVI shell companies. You've built a beautiful house on a piece of I look at his shoes. Handmade. Black calfskin. No brand. The kind of shoes that never touch a public sidewalk. I say, Chen, I have the blue binders. 4,000 pages of compliance. He smiled. It's the smile of a man watching a fly explain the physics of a spider web. Compliance is for the middle class, Mark. Power is for the architects. I need 51% of your foundation. Not for the money. I have money. I need it because you are a variable. And in my city, we don't like variables. We like constants. Sign the transfer by Friday or find out how quickly a 5-year visa can be revoked for security reasons. He leaves a document on my desk. It's printed on 120 GSM cream-colored paper. It smells like sandalwood and old money. It's the ultimate microaggression. He didn't even bring a lawyer. He brought a threat wrapped in a silk ribbon. I didn't panic. Panic is an emotion for people who still believe the world is fair. I spent the next 72 hours in the weather report mode. Wednesday, 2 a.m. The humidity in the Kunshan warehouse is 78%. I am sitting on a plastic crate labeled batch number 992X. I am drinking a 2 yuan bottle of Nongfu spring water. I am looking at the faces of my night shift drivers. Old Wang is 54. He has a scar on his left hand from a 1998 industrial accident. Xiao Li is 22. He wants to buy an apartment in a Tier 4 city so his girlfriend will say yes. These men are my shadow army. Chen thinks he owns the invisible ink. But I own the visible labor. Thursday, 10 a.m. The audit began. Mr. Chen sent 16 men in gray suits. They didn't look like accountants. They looked like coroners. They checked the serial numbers on 14,000 pallets. They checked the expiration dates on the fire extinguishers in Warehouse B. They found a 0.5 centimeter crack in the loading dock pavement. They issued a safety violation fine of 500,000 RMB. I didn't argue. I pulled out a pre-signed check from my $15 wallet. I handed it to them like I was handing a napkin to a messy eater. Friday, 3:00 p.m. The golden child contrast returned. Mr. Chen's son, Arthur, arrived in a neon yellow Lamborghini. Arthur is 24. Arthur has a degree from a London design school he never attended. Arthur has a watch that could pay for the education of every child in Old Wang's village. He walked into my office and put his feet on my desk. My dad says you're a stubborn peasant, Mark. Just sign the paper. I need the Kunshan hub to launch my luxury sneaker brand. It's a good deal for you. You get to keep 49% of the shadow of my success. I looked at Arthur. I saw Julian. I saw Christopher. I saw every person who had ever told me I was just a gear. I reached into my drawer. I didn't pull out the contract. I pulled out a small encrypted hard drive. Arthur, my voice was as cold as a morgue slab. Does your father know about the $120 million you lost on the Tokyo crypto exchange last month? The money that was supposed to be the government infrastructure fund. The money you tried to hide by using my shell company's routing numbers? Arthur's feet slid off the desk. The neon yellow of his car seemed to fade from his face. How do you have that? I stood up. I walked to the window. Because I'm the gardener, Arthur. And gardeners know exactly where the bodies are buried. Saturday night. The rain in Hangzhou doesn't fall. It hangs in the air like a wet curtain. Mr. Chen's private estate is a 14-acre fortress of silence. He invited me to the tea pavilion. No gray suits. Just the two of us. If you're watching this, tell me, have you ever sat in a table where the only thing being served was your own destruction? Mr. Chen poured a tea that cost 2,000 RMB per sip. He used a porcelain cup that was 300 years old. You're smarter than Julian, Mark. And you're braver than Christopher. But you've made a mistake. You think information is power. Information is just power is the hand that controls the volume. The specific gravity of the liquid was perfect. No bubbles. I said, the $120 million isn't noise, Mr. Chen. It's a resonance frequency. If it hits the right ears in the Central Audit Bureau, the entire invisible ink empire starts to vibrate. And when things vibrate that hard, they shatter. His pulse, visible in his neck, didn't speed up. My son is a fool. But fools are protected by the family name. You, on the other hand, are a foreign element. If you release that drive, you won't be deported. You'll simply cease to be. Your foundation will be liquidated. Your 240 suppliers will be blacklisted. Old Wang will lose his pension. Xiao Li will never buy that apartment. Is your justice worth their hunger? He wasn't threatening me. He was threatening the only thing I actually cared about, the people who had stayed in the trenches with me. I looked at the ancient bonsai tree in the corner. It had been wired and twisted for a century to look perfect. It was beautiful. It was a prisoner. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the $300 maxed-out credit card from 2017. I laid it on the table. I started with this, I said. I've lived in a basement with mold. I've eaten 4 UN noodles for a year. You think you can threaten me with loss? I've already lost everything that mattered before I even met you. But you have everything to lose. Your son's future. Your family's name. The invisible ink. I didn't sign the contract. I left the hard drive on the table. The drive is yours, Mr. Chen. But the password? The password is held by a law firm in Zurich. It will be released automatically if I don't check in every 24 hours, and I'm a very forgetful man. Sunday morning. The fallout began at 6 a.m. I didn't wait for Mr. Chen to decide. I had already moved. If you're watching this, subscribe, because this is how you kill a giant without ever throwing a stone. I didn't send the crypto data to the audit bureau. That would have been too fast, too messy. Instead, I sent it to Mr. Bull, Chen's rivals. The families who had been waiting for 20 years to find a crack in the invisible ink. I didn't sell the information. I gave it away. For free. By 9 a.m., Mr. Veyano. Chen's son was detained at the Pudong airport. He was trying to board a flight to Vancouver. He had $400,000 in cash in his carry-on. By 11 a.m., the 16 gray-suited men were being audited themselves. By 2 p.m., the safety violations against my warehouse were retracted. The city officials were suddenly very polite. They called me Mr. Mark. They offered me premium tea. I sat in my 58th floor office and watched the news. The weather report said it would be a clear day. On the screen, Chen's government infrastructure projects were being halted. The invisible ink was being washed away by a flood of public inquiry. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt the same cold indifference I felt when I was 25 and renting a rotting attic. The world hadn't changed. The lions were just being replaced by different lions. I called old Wang. The bonus is in your account, I said. Buy the village the new tractor. Tell Xiao Li to buy the apartment. Cash. What about you, boss? Old Wang asked. I'm going to go for a walk, I said. In the rain. May 2025. I am standing at the Suzhou railway station. The platform is crowded with people chasing dreams they can't afford. I am wearing a plain gray hoodie. No Tom Ford. No bespoke silk. I'm carrying a single backpack. I see a group of new expats. They're talking about the Shanghai opportunity. One of them is holding a MacBook Pro with a corporate logo. He looks exactly like Julian did in 2017. He is complaining about the smell of the station. He is talking about how he's going to disrupt the market. I reach into my pocket. I pull out a piece of paper. It is the black and white photocopy of the subway map from 2017. It is torn at the edges. It is stained with the 4 UN coffee from a family mart that no longer exists. I look at the line that leads to the Suzhou basement. I look at the line that leads to the 58th floor office. I realize that the most expensive thing I ever owned wasn't the Kunshan hub. It wasn't the black Kongqi. It was the silence. The ability to walk through a crowd and have no one know my name. The ability to be Nordic furniture that nobody wants to move. I board the train. Second class. Seat 14A. I look out the window as the skyline of the city begins to recede. The gilded shadows are still there, flickering in the sunset. Julian is still handing out flyers. Christopher is still fighting a lawsuit. Mr. Goetz. Chen is still trying to save his son. But me? I am just a passenger. I leave the subway map on the seat. I leave the encrypted drive in a trash can at the station. I leave the invisible ink to the people who are still afraid of the dark. If you've watched all 15 parts, thank you for breathing with me. My name is Mark. I am not a lion. I am not a gardener. I am just a man who realized that the only way to win the game is to own the board and then walk away from the table. The air in the mountains is cold. It tastes like nothing. It's the best thing I've ever tasted. 33 years old. I am living in a village in the Qinling Mountains. The altitude is exactly 2,340 meters above sea level. The cabin I bought cost me 450,000 RMB. Cash. The seller was a man with hands that looked like dried ginger. He didn't ask for my name. He only asked if I knew how to fix a leaking roof. If you're still watching, subscribe. And tell me, what is the exact price of your silence? Let's talk about the contrast. Julian is in a video today. He's on a digital nomad podcast in Bali. He's wearing a linen shirt that costs $250. He's talking about resilience and the hustle of the Shanghai years. He's selling a course for $997 on how to master the China mindset. I am wearing a 35 RMB fleece from a local market. I am holding a rusted iron shovel. Julian has 50,000 followers who think he's a lion. I have a 450,000 RMB cabin where the only sound is the wind hitting the pine needles. The weather report for today? Cloudy. Temperature? 4 degrees Celsius. Humidity? 40%. My pulse is 62. The trauma doesn't feel like a scream anymore. It feels like a ledger that has been balanced. But the machine doesn't let you go that easily. 2 weeks ago, a black SUV arrived at the base of the mountain. It wasn't a Hongqi. It was a modified Mercedes G-Wagon. Matte black. No license plates. A man stepped out. He was wearing a Diancept Biennois de Hourier jab under his arm. He looked like a man who spent his life reading the fine print on death warrants. "Mark," he said. His voice had no vibration. It was a recorded message in a human throat. "Mr. Chen is gone. The foundation you built in Kunshan is too successful. It's distorting the market. The new architects want to know why 240 suppliers are following a ghost. They want to know why the trucks only move when the Mark protocol is active." I looked at the shovel in my hand. It was made in a factory in... Price? 12 RMB. I said, "The protocol isn't a secret. It's just honesty. Honesty is a high-latency system. It takes 7 years to build and 1 second to destroy." The man opened the binder. Inside were photos of my 58th floor photos of the Suzhou basement, and a photo of a woman I hadn't seen since 2016. My sister, in London, standing outside a coffee shop. "We don't want your money, Mark," the man said. "We want the keys to the ghost." The golden child logic never dies. In 2017, it was Julian taking my PDF. In 2024, it is a nameless syndicate taking my legacy. If you're watching this, tell me, have you ever built something so perfect it became your prison? I spent the next week in a grind montage of data. 33 years old. I am back in the code. I wasn't looking at logistics anymore. I was looking at digital microaggressions. Every time I tried to access my Foundation server, the latency increased by 400 milliseconds. Every time I called Old Wang, the line had a specific, rhythmic static. The sound of a $50,000 surveillance suite. Let's talk about the details. My sister's coffee in the photo was a flat one. Price, £3 and 80p. The time on the clock behind her, 10:14 a.m. The message was clear. "We can see the atoms of your life." I didn't call the embassy. I called a man I met in 2019 in a KTV in Dongguan. A man who specialized in low-level signal disruption. He charged me 2.5 Bitcoin. He said, "Mark, you're playing with people who own the satellites. You can't hide in a cabin. You have to become the noise in their system." I looked at my 12 RMB shovel. I realized that for 7 years I had been building a bridge. But a bridge can also be a wall. I had given the 240 suppliers a future. But I had also given the architects a target. The weather report, the temperature in the cabin dropped to -2. I didn't turn on the heater. I wanted to remember the smell of the Suzhou basement. I wanted to remember the hunger. Because a hungry man is the only thing a man in a G-Wagon can't predict. I sent a message to the black SUV man. I didn't use an encrypted app. I used a postcard, bought from a mountain tourist stall for 2 RMB. It showed a picture of a sunrise. On the back, I wrote one number, 42. The number of pages in the original PDF Julian stole. The message: I am back at the beginning, and at the beginning I have nothing to lose. 34 years old. I am no longer in the mountains. I am in a 15 RMB a night hostel in Chongqing. The room smells of old tobacco and cheap detergent. There is a color-coded binder on my lap, but it's not theirs. It's mine. If you're still listening, tell me. If you had to delete yourself, where would you start? Let's talk about the golden child contrast. The syndicate has a new CEO for my foundation. His name is Thomas. Thomas is 28. Thomas has a Stanford MBA. Thomas has a father who sits on the board of a state-owned bank. Thomas gave an interview to the business journals. He said, "The Mark era was primitive. We are bringing institutional-grade stability to the Kunshan hub. Thomas has the $500,000 PR budget. Thomas has the strategic partnership with the port authorities. Thomas has the applause of the architects. I have a 300 RMB refurbished Lenovo laptop. I have a 10 RMB SIM card registered to a dead man. I have the private cell phone numbers of the 240 suppliers' wives. The montage of the mercenary June. I sent a microglitch to the automated sorting system in Warehouse A. The error code was JD2017. The system didn't crash, it just slowed down by 3%, just enough to make Thomas look slightly incompetent in the morning briefing. July. I leaked a routine internal memo to the truck driver's social media group. It mentioned a proposed 15% reduction in fuel subsidies. It was a lie. But in the world of the architects, a lie on a screen is more real than a truth in a heart. The drivers started slow walking. The 4,000 containers at the Ningbo port stayed for an extra 48 hours. The cost to the syndicate? $2.4 million. Thomas called a press conference. He looked, weather report, cold. He said, "We are experiencing minor technical recalibrations." His hands were shaking under the table. I know because I had a 50 MB hidden camera in the floral arrangement. If you're still here. And tell me, who is the person you trust most? Now imagine them holding the knife. The betrayal didn't come from the syndicate. It came from old Wang, the man whose son's tuition I paid. The man who I thought was... Old Wang met me in a dark tea house in Yuzhong. He didn't look at my eyes. He looked at his 2OC, RMB teacup. "Mark," he said, "they offered my son a job in the ministry. They offered my village a paved road. They told me if I don't give them your MAC address, the road will never be built." This was the ultimate microaggression. It wasn't a threat of it was a threat of progress. The syndicate knew that I could survive pain, but they knew old Wang couldn't survive being the man who held his village back. I looked at old Wang. I didn't feel anger. I felt a weather report detachment. I saw the logic of the system. The system doesn't kill you. It just makes it too expensive for people to love you. "It's okay, Wang," I said. I pulled out my laptop. I showed him the MAC address. I even typed it out on a piece of paper for him. Give them what they want. But tell them one thing. Tell them that the Mark protocol isn't in the hardware. It's in the silence. Old Wang cried. big, ugly tears that fell into his cheap tea. I watched him like I was watching a documentary on a species I used to belong to. I left the tea house. I left the hostel. I left the 300RMB laptop on the table. Everything was going according to the plan, because the MAC address I gave him wasn't for my laptop. It was for the syndicate's own internal global compliance server. I had turned their own searchlight back into their eyes. 34 years old. The grind montage has reached its final. I am standing on the roof of a parking garage in Pudong. I am looking at the 58th floor of the Qiantan Center. The lights are on. The architects are celebrating. They think they have caught the ghost. Let's talk about specific numbers. The total value of the foundation, $1.2 billion. The total value of the diverted funds Thomas hid, $88 million. The time remaining until the Protocol of Zero activates, 180 seconds. If you're watching this, tell me, if you could press a button and erase everything you built, would you do it? The syndicate tried to log in using my MAC address. The moment they did, they bypassed their own firewall. They thought they were entering my world, but they were actually opening the doors to their own vault. I didn't steal their money. I just unlocked it. I made the $88 million in diverted funds public. Not to the police. To the internet. I turned the social exposure into a social explosion. I posted the bank records on every global forum. I translated them into 6 languages. I used the parallelism DNA. Thomas got the $15 million penthouse. Thomas got the $2 million kickback from the Singapore port. Thomas got the $500,000 watch. The drivers got a 15% fuel cut. The reaction was a weather report of chaos. The architects couldn't stop the data. It was a decentralized ghost. It was everywhere, in every convenience store, in every warehouse, on every phone. I watched the lights on the 58th floor go up, one by one. The elevator in the parking garage opened. The man from the G-Wagon stepped out. He didn't have the binder. He had a gun. He didn't point the gun at me. He just held it by his side. Like a Nordic furniture piece of violence. You destroyed it. His voice finally had an emotion. It was exhaustion. $1.2 billion. The stability of the regional supply chain. You burned it all for a 450,000 RMB cabin and a 12 RMB shovel. I looked at the Pudong skyline. It looked like a circuit board that had shorted out. I didn't burn it, I said. I just gave it back to the people who actually moved the crates. The foundation is now a worker-owned cooperative. The legal filings are already in Zurich. The money is in a trust that no one person, including me, can touch. Why? He asked. You could have been one of us. You had the mind of a lion. I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. Because being a lion and being a gardener is boring. I'd rather be the wind. He looked at me for a long time. The weather report was shifting. The humidity was rising. It was going to rain. We will find you again, Mark. Because to find me, you have to look for someone who wants something. And I finally want nothing. I walked past him. I didn't look at the gun. I didn't look at his face. I got into a 1-5. Our MB taxi. I told the driver to go to the airport. 35 years old. I am on a boat. It is a small, rusted fishing vessel on the Yangtze River. I paid the captain 500 MEB to let me stay on the deck. The air smells of diesel and river silt. If you've watched all 22 parts, tell me, where are you right now? Are you in a shadow? I see the Qiantan Center in the distance. It looks small, like a toy left behind by a child who grew up. Julian is still in but I heard his course failed because he couldn't explain the Mark protocol. Thomas is in a re-education phase of his career. He's working in a regional office in a city I can't pronounce. The estate in Hangzhou has been turned into a public park. I reach into my pocket. I find the 500. Our MB Starbucks gift card from 2017. The one Julian gave me as a reward. It still has the balance. I haven't used a single cent of it. I throw it into the gray water of the Yangtze. I don't have a 58th floor office. I don't have a black Hongqi. I don't have a $1,700 Mont Blanc pen. I have a 12 RMB shovel in my backpack. I have the memory of the mold in the Suzhou basement. And I have the sound of the ice hitting the glass in a 180 RMB Negroni. I am the gilded shadow gnome. I am just the river. And the river always reaches the weather report for the rest of my life.